Uh-oh.
that this soft bigotry of low expectations is very much a thing.
That's the Bob opinion.
But fuck you, you coward. You tell me. I'm going to play this for you. You tell me.
Uh-oh.
Here we are, Abe Cast Iron Brains, a podcast that, like a woman Republican senator from the state of Alabama broadcasting a response to the State of the Union from the Airbnb kitchen set of a mid-budget step-family incest porno shoot, is exactly where it is meant to be in this ridiculous world. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here, too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
Fine.
Lori's fine. Tonight is Monday, March the 11th, 2024. You have a good weekend, Abe?
I did, although on Saturday I was trying to hang out with some friends up north in Roswell here in Atlanta, so north of where I live. I had a big idea that the president was going to be in town, but I didn't know when. And I got caught up in the motorcade thing because, like, they locked all of the highway entry points, like, every which way. My stupid Google Maps couldn't figure it out. It's not that fast. They can't tell you the president's in town, so we'll have to find another way. It took, like, an hour just to get to somewhere that would have taken 20 minutes. I get the whole safety, security thing nonsense, but couldn't a president, if they're coming to a big city or, like, a city with a lot of traffic, just have, like, 20 unassuming vehicles around him?
And an important swing state where the last thing that you want to do is piss off, 50 or 60 or 90,000 people who are trying to make their way around town on a Saturday evening in March.
And this was in the afternoon, and there was like some sold out. I mean, Atlanta, anytime it warms up just a little bit, it becomes obnoxious. But like there was like an Atlanta United football game. It was like the opening game, and all of these things were happening at once. So like the detour was taking me to even like. It was not a fun commute north.
Where did the president go? I didn't see where he...
He went to some place, actually not, like a couple of miles from where I live, something yards. I forget what it was called. But like he went... It's like a relatively new place. It's not like an established, like, historically black, whatever.
It probably was historically black.
Yeah.
And now...
And then, no, yes, that's true.
Recently white.
Yeah. And Trump was also in town, but he was like... further north. It wasn't in the city.
Oh, they were both there.
They were both,
Jesus.
in Georgia.
Too much.
That spells a lot of commercials, I suspect, right? This Georgia has become a battleground state. We used to be like left alone.
You're absolutely in for it. It's going to be unpleasant.
Yeah.
We lost an hour over the weekend, Abe. Lori says she doesn't want to talk about it.
We've talked about it every
previously, every first or second Saturday in March in the following episode, we tend to go on at some length about the grave injustice that is daylight savings time.
A couple of years ago, wasn't there some like serious movement towards changing it, like Rubio?
It depends on what you
others?
mean by serious movement. Because
we don't need to talk about it.
You're referring to congressional action, which is almost never serious in the end.
Right.
But yeah, it passed the Senate unanimously.
Yeah,
and then,
that's what it was. It was a unanimous. That's what made it seem like, oh, well, if it's unanimous in these partisan times, then this should be no
surely problem. Nancy. I believe it was the Nancy Pelosi Congress that neglected to take it up in any form or fashion after Marco Rubio helped push it through the Senate.
Fucking guy. Don't even talk about it.
Marco Rubio, he was on the Sunday shows. Was it this weekend or was it last? I think it was this weekend. I think it was this weekend. This is a guy like Ben Kingsley who's got the ear growing disease, where as the older he gets,
they call that aging. It's ear growing.
It's just aging, but it's more apparent on some people than others. And two people that I noticed the big ear growing thing happening on. Over the course of this weekend, I married the pop culture with the news, right? We're watching the Oscars and watching the Sunday morning program. Is Marco Rubio and Ben Kingsley both have have ears that are going to take over their entire skulls before much longer.
Now, the face, is it the eyes that don't change? Or what is it about your face?
That's a myth.
So that
Nothing doesn't change.
So everything changes. So, like, do the ears, are they, like, for some people, like Kingsley and Rubio, they just get bigger?
I'd rather not know the actual answer. I'd rather just be comfortable with my assessment of it.
Bob thinks he won't age, so.
Yeah. I mean, I got to pull hair out of weird places these days still, even in my early 40s. It's like, wow, what a strange shape for hair to be growing out of my inner ear. Like, what the hell is going on in there? Why is it all wiry? But, yeah, other than that, I look great. Speaking of, let's be fully bipartisan in our approach to the appearances of our senators, because Rubio appeared on the Sunday morning show with Mark Warner of Virginia, who is such a strange-looking human being in the face. We watched Poor Things over the weekend.
Yeah.
And like before the Oscars, there was still a bunch of movies we hadn't seen yet, and Poor Things was available on Hulu, I think. So we were watching Poor Things, and in that, Willem Dafoe has got like the patchwork face that they do to him, where it's like they have the big like globs of clay that sort of make up his face. Mark Warner on the Sunday shows, it looks like he's got a nose that you could like Mr. Potato Head right off of him. Like you could just grab it and take it off of his face and replace it with some other piece. And it would, like, it's just something about his face doesn't hang together quite naturally. It's a very strange face Mark Warner's got.
I'm looking up his face because I have a vague recollection of him. But you're right, he does look a little... But, I mean, I've seen his face for so long, because wasn't he, like, a governor for your state? And then he's like he's been around.
He was the first person I ever voted for.
Yeah, he's been around forever, and he's always kind of had that face.
That's how it works here in this state.
Since I was 18 is not forever.
The governors can't.
Yeah,
the governors
like
can't run twice,
yeah.
And so they got to figure out something else to do with their lives instead of like doing 8 or 12 years and then just retiring or going into the private sector or something. It's like 4 years isn't enough, so they got to become senators and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I guess Virginia is unique in that way, because I haven't heard of any other state do it that way. Most states are 2 terms, like normal people. What's with this one term nonsense?
I hope he didn't have some sort of awful childhood disease.
You can have 2,
and then
just
like,
not consecutive. Yeah.
That's what happened to his face as a result. Where like he did it, he like saved a child from a burning building, and they had to reconstruct his face out of his ass or something.
If so,
and
would you withdraw your current criticisms? No,
it's not a criticism. It's just an observation.
An observation. Okay.
I wouldn't have been so glib, perhaps. Anyway, that's what you get when you take an hour away. You get punchy assholes in your podcast feed, you people. And all you...
maybe because of the daylight savings time, there was only 23 hours on Sunday. I was like, and the Oscars were starting an hour early. I'm not going to watch the morning shows. I did hear
right call.
That the only thing I heard about the morning talk shows was Nancy Mace had apparently like quite the encounter with George Stephanopoulos on This Week. Like she was being a little confrontational. I didn't.
I don't know what because I watched the clip. It's a lengthy, your typical length for a Sunday show interview, I guess. But it was very uncomfortable throughout, in which Stephanopoulos does the. You are a victim of rape, and Donald Trump has been found liable for rape. So, what do you think about that, Nancy? Which is not it's a gross sort of gotcha thing that Stephanopoulos is doing
That's
there.
how it opened? Like, that's how at least that line of questioning happened?
That probably wasn't the most... Like, I didn't give the word for word on it, but that was pretty close. I'll play the clip here.
It's like, hey, what gives? You're not into rape. Why are you into this rapist?
I can't stand David Muir's stupid face.
Another observation?
David Muir is too handsome to be doing serious network television.
What should he be doing?
He's got none of the gravitas. He should be on a stupid soap opera or something, or like maybe a nighttime soap, like a Grey's Anatomy doctor or something. But he doesn't belong doing this stupid nightly news for ABC.
I mean, it's the number one.
Acting isn't the same as reading.
I'm not saying he could be a good actor. I mean, he's just...
But a person who wants to act is not the same as a person who wants to read news
I'm sure I've
at
said
people?
this. I'm sure I've said this before. Peter Jennings is the correct level of handsomeness for a news presenter. A not overwhelmingly or over tanned
Anderson Cooper.
handsome person. I don't know. I don't judge blondes, men or women, in terms of their handsomeness.
He doesn't have blonde hair.
He's a blonde though. He might
silver
not.
hair.
Yeah, sure, but he's a blonde.
So, Bob, your thinking is that you don't want somebody to be distracting in either direction, somewhere in the middle. Like they don't want to be distractingly handsome.
Bob is distracted by his looks.
It's not.
Yes.
It's the problem of when Fox News has the smoking hot chicks doing the news presentation. Right. It's just you can't take it seriously.
But that was like a Roger Ailes thing, right? Like all these old horn dogs.
No, the correct level
legs.
of attractiveness is a Peter Jennings or a.
What about your girlfriend?
Or a Maggie Brennan. Maggie Brennan is the correct level of, whatever. I don't need to go any further than that.
You've got far enough.
Obsessed with her.
Literally the only way to find anything on YouTube is to hope that I've seen it already, so I can then go into my history and find it again.
They probably think that this is increases engagement somehow. Like, make it a frustrating experience, and they'll stick around.
And you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they are
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
they are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all. I
told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court.
That goes on for like the rest of the interview. It's just a back and forth. Stop shaming me, and he says I wasn't shaming you, and she says you're shaming me, and then she says actually E. Jean Carroll is the one who is also being bad here. And it's like, well, then Nancy, aren't you sort of shaming E. Jean Carroll for the way she is reacting to the rape? Like she's not conforming to what you want her to. Like it's all very stupid.
Right. She's from South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay. She's like Lindsey Graham in the amount of time, like she's on TV like a lot.
South Carolina punches so far above its weight in terms of its Congress people showing up in national media.
Yeah.
Between Nikki Haley, who was the governor of the state, a couple of weeks ago, because they had their primary, there was a Sunday show that was like back to back. It was like 40 minutes of just South Carolina stuff.
But that was the primary. It made sense.
I know, but like we get way more of the Lindsey Graham and of Tim Scott and Nikki Haley and Nancy Mace than is rational for the size of the state or the importance of the state. Like it's not like it's a swing state. It's not like it fucking matters.
The thing. It's very odd.
Lots of Jim Clyburn action as well out of South Carolina.
they must be always like, whenever a producer comes calling their office, they're always, maybe it's just like whenever, we'll show up. Like maybe they're the only ones that are like, yeah, we'll show up no matter what.
Anyway, I don't know if there's anything to say about that interview except that it's two very to me, it ended up being just 10 minutes of two unlikable people bickering at each other. And I don't know that I could choose who was more in the wrong or not. Obviously, Nancy Mace is incentivized to be offended by whatever question it is that George Stephanopoulos is going to ask her because he is despised as a member of both a former member of the Clinton administration and also a longtime mainstream media guy. Everybody on the right hates him. But I didn't think it was such a terrible question, and I thought her reaction was a bit much.
Although I of all the available options to her, like that was probably like the most logical, because basically it's either take this approach, right? How dare you, or say that the rape didn't happen, like you don't want to wade into that, or the worst option than that would be to say, yeah, he raped her and I still support him, or whatever, like his policies. Like you couldn't say that either, right? So like of the options available to her.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just what
approach.
Happens when you get in bed with Donald Trump, I suppose. Right. Ultimately, that's probably the wrong metaphor to use in this particular situation.
Little bad.
Oh, all right.
It's daylight savings time. That's what that does.
Yeah. Did you watch the Oscars?
I did.
You're skipping all the way to the Oscars? You're skipping over the State of the Union?
I didn't know where to go next. We could do the Oscars. We could do the State of the Union.
The
I don't know.
Oscars is entertainment. You do that fun later.
All right.
Start with your... Because it's obvious. You start with the boring, whatever you just did, and then still boring, State of the Union, which leads into
Should we talk about Nancy
entertainment.
Should we talk about Nancy Mace's face, since we talked about all the other faces?
I don't know who that is.
It's the woman we just watched.
Oh, she looks familiar.
Well, yeah, she's been on television a bunch.
No, that's not who. She looks familiar in a pretty way. I'll figure it out. Talk about your State of the Union and then
She's got
pay attention
lower
again
jaw,
when you get to
the lower jaw sticks out a little further than it should. She's got a little bit of an underbite.
What's her name?
Thing
Nancy
happening
Mason?
there.
What do you mean?
Like she's
the face
like
is the
she's
face.
she's
What's her
sticking
name?
her bottom
Nancy
teeth
Mace.
out a little bit too far.
Mace?
Yeah, some people talk that way, where they're sticking the bottom teeth out too far to look tough. I don't know.
She looks like an actress, and I'm trying to figure out who it is.
Anyway, the State of the Union. Hey, we said last week that, or at least I said that it felt to me like it was a big, important State of the Union speech, potentially, that the downside was tremendous and the upside probably minimal, was my feeling going in. I think he hit the minimal upside, just in terms of the way it looked and felt. He took his afternoon nap and no doubt had some sort of a caffeinated beverage or some sort of pill to go with his highly caffeinated beverage and was ready to go when he finally made his way into the well there at Congress a few minutes later than anticipated, apparently because they had to plan a new route to the Capitol because of some protesters who had set up outside with big banners, and apparently they didn't want the visual of President Joe Biden crossing in front of the protesters with the Genocide Joe banner in the background. Yes, Lori. Lori's raised her hand.
She looks like Amanda Peet.
Oh, okay, there you go. I can see that.
You know what? I think it's the same thing where the bottom, the mouth kind of juts out a bit more than you want it to if you were designing the person in a program for designing people.
I went to Bruce Willis. I found the whole 10 yards, and then I found Amanda Peet.
Yeah.
All right, talk about Biden again.
Like I said, he did the minimum. Again, you can go back and listen to it if you really want to. I don't think it's worth necessarily revisiting in any granular detail, but there are half a dozen or more examples of him completely flubbing the line or stuttering his way through whatever it was he was trying to say.
Though.
The stuttering is fine. It's when the syntax of the sentence no longer holds up and it completely loses its shape and it's just a series of nouns that don't connect to one another that things start to get uncomfortable. And like, say what you will about Mike Johnson sitting back there and making his confused, befuddled face as he shakes his head back and forth. That was my reaction a number of times also, was just like, what? What exactly was he trying to say there? And like having to reconstruct the idea of the sentence after you've heard most of the words, just to try to figure out what he was saying. And the one big ad lib that he blew also, which is he wanted to confront Marjorie Taylor Greene because that goes well for you if you're Joe Biden, right, because she is an obviously awful human being who can't help but to be herself in that fashion, given the slightest opportunity. And so she pipes up and is screaming the say her name thing. And he pulls the button out that Greene had handed her on his way through the chamber there on the way to the stage, and says the name wrong, says Lincoln Riley, as though this were
because it's already someone's name and it's confusing.
Yeah, I don't think he knows who the coach of the USC Trojans are.
I think he obviously does,
I'm sure
because
the name
that's
is
what he said.
Circulating in his mind. Like, I'm sure he's heard of the name.
Yeah, that's just the name you've heard a million times.
No, you just have heard the name Lincoln before, and Lakin is a bullshit made-up name, and I'm sorry that the pretty young lady was murdered, and that was not her fault, and certainly not her parents' poor naming choices. But
we'll never know. We'll never know that.
Are you saying that name is not a valid name? Is that not like a biblical name?
It's not.
Have you known
I've never heard
Lakins?
it.
Not yet.
Lakin?
No. So that's not an actual name?
I've known significantly more Abdul Rahman Mohammeds than I've known Lakins.
Lakin.
Significantly more. No, I've never heard the name Lakin before, and it sounds silly. And I'm whatever. That doesn't matter. I don't know if we have to explain it, but this is the 22-year-old nursing student who was on the campus of the University of Georgia. She had previously been a student there, but was now a student at some nursing school on the north side of town. I think University of Augusta or something has a campus there. I don't know. But she was confronted for some unknown reason in the middle of the day over there by the lake on the intramural fields where she was out for a run, a place that I know well, as any of us no doubt do. Lori used to live right across the street from where this happened, as a matter of fact.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to drive by it all the time, obviously, but I've seen some stuff online that this guy sexually assaulted her in some way or raped her, but I haven't seen anything official. And it's increasingly difficult to sort anything that is true and factual from whatever garbage it is that you see float by on Twitter when you go on Twitter. But I don't think that's been officially confirmed or anything. But for some reason, I don't know if in my head, I don't know why I would even say this now, but if I'm imagining the situation in which this confrontation takes place, he catcalls her or something, and she is rude to him in response, which is a valid thing to be.
Right.
And he doesn't take kindly to the rude response to his catcall and has some sort of a violent outburst. I made that up entirely. I don't know what the fuck happened, but we don't have any details. The bottom line being that he is not in this country according to the laws of this country. He crossed the border illegally in 2022, was, I believe, turned himself in, as so many of them do, and then was released and given a court date and has made his way around the country a little bit. I believe was in New York in addition to a couple of other places over the course of the last 2 years, and ended up in Athens, where he ends up having this committing this allegedly murder of the young lady. And of course it turns into this whole big thing, as these things always do. And I have a certain amount of, I don't know if it's sympathy, but I understand the instinct, and it becomes exploited and easily exploited by political types. But the feeling that but for the fact that this guy was here illegally, she would still be alive, right? And there's something that's an added salt in the wound thing for these sorts of crimes, where it's if he had not been allowed to roam free in this country, despite the fact that we knew he was here illegally, this girl would still be alive. That is seems to be an indisputable fact, right?
Right.
And so then it becomes easy to pin it on the politics of the other side, if that's what you seek to do. And it becomes something that you cannot talk about. You cannot respond to that accusation with, well, actually, illegals, so-called illegal or undocumented migrants commit crimes at a lower rate than the ordinary citizen does, it's like, well, that doesn't fucking matter in the face of this. Like, you sound like a heartless psycho when you say something like that. And anyway, that's a long way of getting to Joe Biden during the State of the Union saying Lincoln Riley on the stage there, and then referring to this guy as an illegal, right? He's using the language of the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the rest of the right wing to call this guy an illegal, which
he's
then...
also 1,000 years old.
Sure.
And also, I mean, he's talking about somebody who is accused of killing. Who cares the naming of?
I agree, but he does, because he tried to clean it up 2 days later in Georgia. In fact, I believe is when he was talking to the media and
with like an MSNBC interview, right? Yeah, he was
right. So it matters to the people that he thinks it matters to, which is his base, which I think is ridiculous. I think that this was an opportunity. If he's going, like, he'd already done it. He'd already in front of 50 million people, or what. I didn't actually see what the ratings for this thing was, but in front of tens of millions of Americans, everybody was tuned in for this last Thursday. He said he was killed by an illegal, and to me, or she was killed by an illegal. Like, to me, that fucking plays. Yeah. It plays maybe not to your base. It's going to upset the squad, and they're going to feel like you're unnecessarily dehumanizing a whole class of people. But to most normal people, he's just talking about one scumbag, right? Like, and it works for most people to hear the president be sort of so put out by the fact that a beautiful young nursing student was murdered by a scumbag in broad daylight. So go ahead and use dehumanizing language when you talk about this one person. I think that plays for a lot of people, and it's weird to me that he would feel compelled to clean it up. But I guess it just speaks to the fact that this is a campaign that is so terrified of the margins being so tiny that they cannot afford to have their most ardent, or not, you can't even call them their most ardent supporters, but to have the people of the left not be highly motivated to come out and vote for them.
Right. Although I can't imagine that with a story such as this, that the types who would be squeamish about the word illegal are going to sit out because the president used that term in a back and forth. But I feel like we're kind of in a weird time loop. Wasn't there a similar story in the run-up of the 2016 election in San Francisco? There was like, I looked at it, it was Kate Steinle. There was some woman who was going about her day in San Francisco, and some illegal immigrant person shot her and killed her. And it was made into a big thing. I think Trump also was kind of drumming up the similar story, saying like, if it were not for this illegal crossing, this person would not be in the position to do what they did. And it kind of plays.
Well, I think there was one in like Illinois or something also. I don't know if that was post-election or when that happened, but there've been a number of these anecdote immigrant murders that have happened.
Right.
And it does feel like we're in a bit of a time loop as far as that goes.
And so, like, anything like, if something tragic happens, just deal with the tragedy. Don't, like you said, do the weird thing where, like, well, statistically, it usually doesn't happen. Like, that's not even cold comfort to anybody, right? Just deal, like, it's fucked up that it happened. It shouldn't have happened. This person should be held responsible. Similar thing that happened with, what was it, Dukakis, when there was some sort of parole, somebody was let out because of some policy, and the person while they were out.
The Willie Horton ad. Right. Dukakis was the governor. He elected to parole someone. He was on some sort of work release, maybe.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, while on release, committed a crime that the Bush the Bush campaign then took advantage of and ran ads against.
Right. And I think that is like a stronger example of the same thing. But basically, it's this idea of the opportunity was there to prevent this person from being in a place to commit harm, and either through the parole process or through the border, the lax policy of the border, they were allowed in. Like, we failed this person who then got the brunt of the violence, and then you try to like extrapolate that one incident to say, like, who knows how many of these people are among the millions that have come in. Like, I mean, that's kind of like the political argument they're trying to make. And if you're just talking about the specific case, just say it's fucked. I mean, there's no way around it. It's fucked up. If they want to make it into a policy thing, they just say, well, there's opportunities to do something politically. And the last time this happened, it was a no-go on your side. 10 years ago, it was a no-go on your side. 15 years ago, it was a no-go. It's like every time there's something to be done, there doesn't seem to be the stomach to do anything.
Right, which is why I thought this was an opportunity, especially the way that Biden phrased it, with his sort of impolitic reference to this guy as an illegal. This was an opportunity to turn it against the Republicans and to make it an obvious win for him.
Yeah.
But because he couldn't quite get the line out right, and then 2 days later is apologizing and trying to walk it back, it doesn't come across that way. Because, again, I don't think that they don't believe, and perhaps correctly so, they don't believe that there really is an opportunity for him to play across party lines in that way, right? That even when they are obviously on the right side here, which is according to Mark Warner, just as we were talking about him earlier, as he said in his interview with CBS this weekend, he was like, I think that this was, and I'm not, and yeah, is he politically motivated to say something like this? Yes. But most close watchers of immigration legislation over the course of the last 20 years seem to agree that this is about as strong an immigration bill as has ever been put forth, that they were anywhere close to getting signed, right? That this would have given a great deal of power back to the executive to do far more than has been the case up till now. And they didn't take that opportunity. The Republicans decided, rather than give Biden a political win on that front, to just sit on it and make it go away. And that was after demanding this exact sort of thing in exchange for foreign aid for Ukraine and Israel. Right. And that to me, if instead on Saturday of backing away from the thing that he said where he called the guy an illegal, he instead doubles down and says, if it were up to me, we would have already had this legislation passed and I would have closed the border, and maybe there's no preventing what happened, the tragic circumstance in which Laken lost her life. And I have immense regret over any possibility that we could have done something differently in the first 2 years of my administration that might have prevented that horrible eventuality. But moving forward, we got through the Congress the toughest immigration bill that this country has seen in decades, right? Like pre-Reagan. We haven't seen immigration reform like this since the fucking Chinese Exclusion Act, right? Like he could have played it to that level of speaking to the concern that a great number of normie Americans have about the border, and instead he chose to back away to appear less sort of reactionary on this front to his left flank, and I think that was. Maybe it's not a political mistake. Maybe they're reading it correctly. But to me, I find it the wrong move.
Do you think, now where people are, the people watching MSNBC are different from the people watching Fox News, who are different from the people watching CNN and all the other different media outlets?
The 130,000 people watching MSNBC, that's what drives me nuts. Right. Who are we talking about here? But the weekend audience on MSNBC is like 80,000 people. Like there's nobody watching that shit.
But to that point, do you think that this was some calculation made by the Biden camp to say, like, we'll clean up the language and it will be targeted towards the people who could possibly be offended by the language?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Abe's right. I was hoping you would say that.
No one else will hear this. I mean, Trump kind of regurgitated it to make sure other people have heard it. But like maybe that was the idea. Like, hey, by the way, yeah, don't get caught up in the language. That's not what he meant. Let's stick to
right. But that's the thing. If you're just speaking to your co-partisans, then your enemies are going to use it against you.
No, but you're not worried about your enemies. If what you're worried about is the normal people who that saying illegal would maybe resonate a little with, just like, oh, he said illegal, whatever, and that endears them even a little, they're not going to pay attention. They don't care enough to have him say, oh, sorry, I said that, and care. Like, they just heard it the once and moved along.
Sure. The bigger problem, I think, is not even any of this. I think it's his inability to really deliver the knockout blow in the moment that it was called for because he's so fucking old. Right. Like, it's a moment that he comes across as getting the better very slightly if you're looking at this exchange from an objective point of view. I think probably just by virtue of the fact that he's the president standing there on the microphone, and the rabble, the Marjorie Taylor Greene rabble, are the ones who are in the audience. Right. By nature, that is in the parlance of our times, there's a power dynamic there that works to Joe Biden's favor. But he's completely incapable at this point in his life of actually delivering what looks like a knockout victory in a moment like that. And it as distasteful as Mike Johnson looks back there, disdainfully shaking his head in a befuddled sort of way, I'm not sure that that's not the reaction that most people are having as well, which is just, man, this guy is old, and I can't believe this is the situation we're in again.
Although, I mean, the Speaker of the House making faces, I don't. The people be back there, the Senate, the Vice President, and the Speaker of the House. It's just neutral face. Just like pretend this is an SNL thing, and you're the band. Just let that person in the foreground do the thing, and just be done with. Why do you need to make all these stupid faces? It doesn't make any sense. To the State of the Union speech itself, like this was kind of. I think I was kind of making this point last week that, like, I mean, it's not like the president going to come and tumble and trip over himself or just like drool, or like he'll just mumble through some of it. He'll say some other things pretty normally, and then people will forget about it by the week. It's not going to be a big thing, right? But it's getting to the point where, like, when Donald Trump was like, oh, this guy is not a good debater. Like, you know, like when he goes up against Hillary or he goes up against whomever, it's going to show. I remember there was being like, this guy's not a good he just kind of just says things, and like he will be met with something. And the bar was set so low for him that like anything he did was like, well, he did it. Like, he was just talking out of his ass.
Right.
Like,
also, he unquestionably won at least 2 of the debates against Trump in 2020, like including especially the one where he groans, "Will you just shut up, man?" Right? Like he was like, Trump was obviously defeated in those debates in a way that was apparent to everyone besides Donald Trump, I think.
Right. But the point is that the expectations sometimes, like if the expectations are low enough, you don't have to do much. Just like you're saying, it's not like he did like the greatest State of the Union speech, but like it was received well because, oh my God, at least he's not like a fucking dead person. Like, he's alive. Right. He can say things for an hour. He can even, like, you know, here and there. Like, these are like otherwise, I mean, unremarkable things. Like, nobody would say that about Obama, right? Like, that he can get through a speech, right? But like, if the standard is that, then they can kind of like leverage that to say he'll just make, you know, every like 3 weeks, like some speech somewhere, you know, get his rest, you know, get on his bike or whatever he does to kind of get amped, and then make the speech, let that play during the news cycle, just disappear for like 3 weeks, and then do it again, and just kind of just do that for the next 8 months. Like, if the reaction is going to be like that, oh, he can do a thing for an hour, just limit his public appearances to these kind of settings, you know, and
yeah,
you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just, it is sort of incredibly depressing to imagine that, like, that's what we're hoping for out of the next president, right? Is to just barely survive long enough so that they can make Kamala Harris the president in like July of next year. Like, that's the best case scenario.
You
probably,
have to play
right?
the hand you're given, right? Not a good hand, but that is, you're right.
Meanwhile, the Trump news cycle at the moment is his former chief of staff talking about how much Trump admired Hitler. Like Trump and it was Trump and Bolton and Trump and Kelly, I think, right? John Kelly. Yeah. Talking about how like Donald trying to do sometimes you really got to hand it to Adolf Hitler routine, which is such a, like, what makes it believable. And I firmly 100% believe that Donald Trump would regularly be one of those guys who said, you know, say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos sort of thing, right? Yeah. Like, he's the sort of person who knows precisely what is the obnoxious, faux enlightened position to take in any argument, right? Like, Hitler was bad, but the fucking trains ran on time, right? So he can't have been all bad, right? It's a lot of Jews, but besides that,
it's interesting. I think like it rings true, this report, in one respect. Like, he focuses on the fact that this strong man, and it doesn't matter who. You can basically plug in anybody. Like, it doesn't matter what horrible things they have done. Just plug in any strong man. And he is fascinated by the fact that there's, like, total fealty to him. Like, there's, like, total loyalty from his underlings. And he's like, why don't I have that here? All these stupid fucking rules. And, like, I tell some guy who worked for me to do something and I can't, like, fire him for some reason. Like, I think he's kind of stuck on that. Like, why can't I get that sort of loyalty like that Putin has or Hitler has? Like, totally disregarding what Putin and Hitler have done to other people. Like, that's not my problem. I'm just focused on the loyalty that others have, which is not real loyalty. I mean, like, I think John Kelly in the report was like, some of his underlings try to, like, assassinate Hitler because he was a crazy fuck. And, like, right. I didn't know that.
Hitler's generals were frequently trying to kill Hitler, actually. Mr. President, you sure that that's the situation you want to find yourself in? He wants the trappings of authoritarianism. And the problem with the way that this plays out in the media is that they're like, oh, look at Trump. This is the authoritarian presidency we're going to get in a second term, is the Hitler or the Putin version of this. It's like, no, he just wants, what he wants more than anything is that first cabinet meeting that Pence ran where they just go around the table and everybody talks about how awesome Donald Trump is, right? He just wants the trappings of authoritarianism. He doesn't want to actually do anything. And I know that maybe that seems like I'm playing down the threat that second Trump administration would be, and I think there is a greater threat in a second Trump administration than there was in the first, just because as much as I
burned through all the people, all the, like, semi-decent, like, qualified people he burned through the first administration.
As cowardly as I think Reince Priebus and John Bolton and John Kelly and Mattis and all of the rest ultimately were, in terms of their insistence that at least we are the adults in the room, and they, to whatever extent they stood up to him behind the scenes. I suppose they did. They kept the country on the rails to some extent, I suppose.
Yeah, weren't there, like, threats of resignations if he did a thing, like if he fired, I think, Comey? Like, wasn't there? Yeah, there were all these reports. I don't know how true they were, but there were at least some, like, attempts to try to curb his whatever he was trying to do. Like, wasn't he trying to do, like, a parade, like a military parade, like his King Jong-un?
On 4th of July.
He's definitely doing that if he comes back in, right? I mean, he won't have anybody that says no. Like, I want that goddamn parade.
Right. There's no Mark Esper in the second Trump administration, right? Like, I mean, as annoying as these people were to deal with, that was the best that we were going to get, and I recognize that. But still, he doesn't want to do hard presidenting stuff that being an authoritarian requires, right? Like, he just wants to be on the television all the time. He just wants to wake up and turn on the TV and see that the whole fucking world is thinking about him and talking about him. That's all that matters to him. And the surest way to that happening is becoming the president again. And he doesn't know what else to do with his life besides that. And fine, I guess. Like, that's sort of who he is. I don't see it as... Like, I see sort of the rot as potentially devastating to the country long term, but in terms of, like, this being an actual threat to the institutions, like, again, I'm sure I've said something like this many times. If he is the threat to the institutions that they purport him to be, then we're already too far gone, right? Then all is already lost. And maybe that's the case, that all is already lost, but it's not going to be some sort of Trumpian Third Reich that ends up bringing the country down. It's going to be the rot that exists already within the system, that his ability to exploit it represents, right? Like, that's the actual problem of a second Trump presidency.
But the problem with second Trump term with his thinking. Like he wants like adoration and people to be like kissing his ass, like that quack doctor who was like, like he could live to 200 in theory. Like, when he gave him the health report a few years ago, like
right.
I think his last year, like he's like 6'3", barely 215, like he's like Muhammad Ali size somehow.
Right.
Like he was kind of, but he wants that sort of thing.
Donald Trump is 8% body fat, just despite living on nothing but microwaved hamburgers for the last 35 years.
I'm surprised he didn't have like a diet plan. He's had all these other plans, but like, if he doesn't get the presidency, like what happened, like, I know we're going to talk about the Oscars in a second, but, Jimmy Kimmel, the host, made a crack about some tweet or truth or whatever he posted. I initially
They're
thought
all just tweets, Abe. I'm sorry. I'm not calling Twitter X. I'm not calling them anything but tweets.
It is still Twitter.com.
I'm not calling whatever he's doing truths. It's just tweets. They successfully.
It's not Twitter though. It's a.
Oh, whatever. He tweeted it out. You know how I know? Because it was in a square that somebody fucking screenshotted into a news article that I read, and that's what a tweet is. Okay? Yes.
In your defense, that's what these other fake Twitter sites are going after anyway, so I might as well just lump them together. But, like, he, like, as much as he loves the adoration from his people, like, he probably bristles and hates the fact that the laughter came so easily after Jimmy Kimmel, and I know that's not an audience that's favorable to him anyways, but just like the fact that all these people are just like laughing at this guy is not, like if that continues, like he would go a step further. I don't think there's going to be a third Reich, but I think like any sort of checks on him are gone on his side. I mean, he's taken completely over the party. Anyone he hires are just going to be some toady, like 100%. And like any dumb idea he gets because he saw something on MSNBC the morning, he'll do. He'll say to do it, and somebody will do it.
Right. Think about this. I'm going to say something that should make you. It should be the most terrifying sentence you've ever heard before. The sentence is, Jared Kushner ain't walking through that door. Right? Like that would be in the way that we're begging for Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States when Joe Biden gets 25th Amendmented next July, as that being the best case scenario. The hope is that Jared Kushner is like, I see no choice but to serve my country once again and return to the White House for a second Trump presidency. Like that would be the best case scenario for a second Trump administration. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, and that's not happening.
I will say that something that you said a moment ago reminds me of, I mean, again, and it feels like we're just saying the same things that we've said many, many times, because everything is exactly the same as it's been since 2015. But
I mean, this is like the third cycle of this. It's like we're just like stuck.
Right. There's a confluence. The thing that made the trumpeting possible was the confluence of hatred that Trump had for the establishment that married up so neatly with the right-wing project of dismantling the establishment for the last 30 years. And it's not because it's motivated by a very different thing, which is that Newt Gingrich's anti-establishmentarianism is motivated by a sincere ideological belief that in the power of conservatism and the dismantling of the administrative state in order for there to be more economic freedom. Like this is the Gingrich sort of project. That was what he has hated about government for so long and the establishment for so long. Trump's was just purely because they laughed at him when he tried to join the club, right? That he's always been this gauche asshole that they find distasteful, and he only ever wanted to be adored by them.
Especially them, right? It's especially them because, this weekend, the UFC, the Punch and Kick had a pay-per-view on Saturday, and in recent pay-per-view events, the president of that company, Dana White, is a big Trump guy, and he will trot him out to the audience's approval. There's a lot of meatheads there, and they're not to stereotype MMA people, but he comes out like like as if he's like a wrestler or something, and they play music, and then they cheer him on, and then like Sunday the Oscars people are shitting on him, and like Trump is a coastal guy. He's from New York. He wants to be into the Hollywood circles. He wants to be into the media circles, like the NASCAR, UFC people. He's settling for. But I don't think that's what he thought his life was going to be, to where he's going to be adored by like UFC people in some random place in Florida, where he could have been like, Arnold was there doing a little Twins reprisal. Like, why can't I be like a former Republican politician and now we're back to normal and kumbaya? Like there's none of that. It's just like you're an outcast forever. Like he doesn't participate in any of the formal ceremonial stuff. Like when Jimmy Carter eventually does die, he's not going to be at the funeral. Whenever the next president dies, he's not going to, Bush or Clinton, or like he's basically just out. He's not like a president in a normal sense. And so, like, he's not going to get that. So, like, I think those factors suggest that things would be bad if he became president again. So he'll just be, like, literally on a vengeance tour. Because, like, I can't get your love, so fuck you. I'm going to just burn the whole thing down.
But how does that translate to, like, how do you tell that to somebody who just thinks Trump is funny and doesn't fucking care, right? Like,
I don't think you can, because, I mean, like, there's a lot of information. It's not like this is a new thing. I mean, this is 9 years into this. Like, if you don't see, it's not like he's doing different things. He's running the same play every day. It's the same guy. It's the same shtick. So, like, if somebody's like, oh, he's funny, if that's the level of engagement you want to play, it's just, I think that when people say that, it's like I can't defend him, so I'll say that he's funny. But there's no really arguing around that.
All right, Abe, pick a number between 1 and 18.
11.
Classic Abe. I'm now going to click to the 11th minute of Katie Britt's response to the State of the Union. I have randomly selected a moment.
Out of how many minutes was it?
It was roughly 18 minutes.
Is that long, considering, is that usually how long they go? It
was somehow not long enough and wouldn't end. I don't know how you do both things at the same time.
I think that I legitimately had 3 different moments of sheer disbelief that this was going on in the fashion that it was going on. Because, like, at first it's like, all right, she'll round into this. Right. She'll figure this out in a minute. After, like, my astonishment happens, and then you take it and it's like, okay, but she'll figure it out.
I need everyone to understand that my evening was spent at community theater. I went to see a play at a community amateur theater, and then I came home to the yelling president for only like 15 minutes, and then this happened, and it was a very disorienting evening for me.
Back to Biden for a second. The comparison has been made by it's a facile and stupid one, but he really does, Biden, come off like that Jeff Dunham ventriloquist guy, the old man puppet that guy used to stick his hand inside of and make talk. Like, it's basically that is what Joe Biden is. All right, here's the 11th minute of in Katie Britt.
Look, where I'm from, your word is your bond. But for 3 years, the president has demonstrated that America's word doesn't mean what it used to. From abandoning our allies in his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan to desperately pushing another dangerous deal with Iran, President Biden has failed. We've become a nation in retreat, and the enemies of freedom, they see an opportunity. Putin's brutal aggression in Europe has put our allies on the brink. Iran's terrorist proxies have slaughtered Israeli, Jews, and American citizens. They've targeted commercial shipping, and they've attacked our troops nearly 200 times since October. killing 3 U.S. soldiers and 2 Navy SEALs. Meanwhile,
all right, I'm gonna stop it there. A little bit more than a minute. That one randomly selected minute has everything that made that completely psychotic, including the bizarre tonal shift that is completely divorced from the content of what she's saying, which is like the breathy sort of threatening language that she's using, and then the big enlightened smile back to talking about dead U.S. troops.
I know this is an audio format here, this podcast, but like you have to see this visually also, because like the breathless kind of weird performance thing
like
paired
theater,
with her contortions.
It must be viewed.
It literally is like some sort of, like, it's like I stepped into some sort of community theater somewhere. Somebody's doing something. I don't know who advised her. Maybe this is all her doing. I don't know if her people said like, hey, we need to like reach out to, I don't know, suburban mothers. Like, I'm trying to figure out like who is this targeting? Like, because it's not like the entire audience that's listening to the State of the Union. Like, is it like a segment of the population, like suburban moms? Is it like Trump? Like, hey, pick me as the Veep? Like, who is the audience that this performance is intended for? It didn't make any sense.
Most concerning to me is that she practiced this half a dozen times at least, right? Like, this is the best version of this that she could muster. Like, it's not like it was a bad, like, this was the best version of what she was trying to do,
but
successfully executed. And she had aides and people in her camp, and
directors.
Presumably, like, I guess there's no longer, like, they didn't run this up the poll at the RNC because there's nobody left besides Trump loyalists up there, so they didn't have to bother with, like, getting approval from somebody up there. But, like, people thought this was going to play. Like, and they went for it, which is very weird.
So to your point, as far as like, how many people like looked at this and thought that this would be a good idea, like, like how like newspapers like local newspapers don't exist anymore, like anywhere. It's basically just the 4 like national media newspapers. Maybe it's like the staffing is like such to where it's just like she's got like a chief of staff, maybe like a legislative person, and like no one else. So they don't have anybody in communications, for instance.
I mean, she has a husband though.
That's true, yeah.
Who played for the Patriots.
Oh, he was a player?
Yes, he was a player at Alabama. Oh, I'll find my favorite tweet about this.
No kidding. She's like our age, right? She's not even very old.
She's a couple years older than us.
She is a robot. She is a robot. She is like 4 years old. Maybe.
She's literally our age, I think.
I think the most unbelievable part of Katie Britt's life is that her husband played 4 seasons for the New England Patriots in the 2000s and didn't win a Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
That is hard to do. One aspect that we left out there when you're talking about the visual of this, Abe, is that she is playing it as though she is giving a monologue on a stage at a local high school gym or something, rather than simply reading from the teleprompter that is very clearly in front of her, right? Like, she plays this not as a speech that she's giving, but instead as though she were giving this performance off the cuff. Like, as though she were, like, she spends moments reaching for words when the words are written on the page right in front of her. And she does, we didn't catch a y'all in this 1 minute clip.
Because she hardly says it.
But she
gives, it's offensive. She is from Alabama.
No, but she sprinkles in the folksy y'alls a handful of times.
A couple times. But it is, I said it to Bob earlier this week, it is offensive to me, and I'm not Southern, but if I were, and that's the accent she went with, like, fuck you. You think you're too good for the South? Fuck you. It's offensive.
Do you think the transcript literally states, like, pause for dramatic effect, or like searching for words?
Oh yes, absolutely.
I don't know how far into this 18-20 minute response I thought this, but like when I was watching it on Thursday, the first thought was like, this is literally like a SNL cold open. Like, you don't even need to like redo this. You could just run this.
That's what I said.
And let the audience like laugh. Yeah, like, and then just go into the show, because like, I mean, you couldn't improve on what she did.
No.
Like you would have to trim it down.
As I hinted at, unfortunately, in the opening tonight, the only thing that I would have changed about this is that you zoom out and there's like a stepbrother and a stepsister at the table with her doing unspeakable acts to each other while she delivers the speech to camera. And that's the only change that I would have made to this performance for the SNL version of it, because it looks like a rented kitchen in Malibu where they make pornography. Right. It does not look like a lived-in kitchen at all, or it looks like a nightmare Airbnb type situation where you walk in and it's like, what sort of creepy weirdos live here, and where are all of the cameras? Because I assume that everything is a camera watching me at the moment.
And was there any? I was just kind of baffled watching this, so I wasn't like taking notes or anything. But like, did she like draw any connections to the speech that the president gave, or was it just like, this is prepared material?
There were a couple of obvious Mad Lib fill-ins that they did, sort of knowing what they're going to get out of a Biden speech. And like, because there's a moment early on, I believe, where she mentions, he said Laken Riley's name, but did he da-da-da-da-da, right?
Okay,
so like,
gotcha. Okay.
So had he not said Laken's name, then she would have, instead of saying, he said Laken's name, instead she would have said, he didn't even have the courage to say Laken's name. And like, so there were like, I think there were like 2 or 3 of those lines where they ad-libbed them in at the conclusion of the speech, but certainly no substantive response to anything he said. But to be fair, there wasn't a lot substantive in the State of the Union
that's
either.
True.
And we didn't make that point. But this was not a policy-oriented speech. This was Biden's, I should say, was a highly political. It was
like
all
a campaign launch.
It was all but a campaign rally. Yeah,
right. It is. I hope like these. Politicians will sometimes have like documentary people filming for some other purpose or whatever, like down the road. I wish that's happening, because like I want to see their faces, because as soon as they wrapped here, the immediate reaction must have been like, nailed it, like good job everybody, high fives, and then like the reaction has been like universally bad. Like I haven't seen anybody say that, they're being too harsh, that was a pretty good speech. Everybody's like, what the fuck was that? Like, everybody's kind of like...
The best one is the guy on the internet who intercut it with the scene in Succession where the girlfriend is reading the news and the family is watching Logan Roy's girlfriend
when Logan's girlfriend reads the news
Yeah. Okay.
President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable.
Great so far.
And the truth is, it is almost entirely preventable.
And then sudden smile. Must act
fentanyl
natural
and
to
anything
fool the
poisonous.
humans.
It is deeply, deeply weird, the decisions that were made to bring Katie Britt to America. I believe you were saying before we got started tonight that it's hard to remember any of these State of the Union responses being received warmly, and I think that's right. You only remember the bad ones. I think there was a Virginia governor who's
in front of people, right?
Neither of our senators, like Bob McDonnell was the guy's name, I think.
Yeah.
And he gave one that I remember being well received. And he did
in front of an audience.
Yes, he did it as like in front of a bunch of
losers,
happy Republicans who were certainly a welcoming audience for him. I have a vague memory of that being fine, but yeah, I think that Marco Rubio must be thinking like, come on, like you tried to torpedo my entire national political career because I got thirsty and had cotton mouth, and this is what we're going with. Like this is the alternative.
The only thing I can compare the State of the Union response, just like how it's either unremarkable or just like bad. Like it's never like good. It's like, the first pitch debacles, like 50 Cent, like throwing it like, or, like Baba Booey. Like there are all these different
Right.
celebrities who have come on the mound or right off it, and then they, for whatever reason, I'm not a ball sports guy. Like I probably would do the same, but you're like, all right, I'm gonna throw it down the middle, and then just the ball goes where it goes, right? And it's just like, what a dum dum, right? And they never show when somebody just throws it down the middle. I guess Bush was the only one where because of the moment.
I remember him.
But generally,
I dare you to watch that and not fucking pine for the good old days. Watch George W. Bush in the bomber jacket going out there and throwing a 70-mile-an-hour heater down the middle, and not be like, man, fucking life was so much better.
Oh my God, it was so much better.
When the world was ending, what do you mean? Literally, the country's in shock. The two towers have fallen. People
but
were
we
freaked
live
the fuck out.
in that. That's all the time now. It's constant 9:13, just every day.
I think
forever.
Nostalgia's doing a little heavy lifting here, because that wasn't a good time. People were freaked out. Oh, is that wipes? Is that cocaine, or is that some drug? Oh my God, we're all gonna die.
We are today, March 11th. We are now no longer in wasn't life better 4 years ago territory that the Trump campaign can safely refer back to, because March 11th, 2020 is the day the NBA finally was
that's when everything fell apart.
This isn't going to work out. That Rudy Gobert guy, that fucking goober, he got COVID after coughing all over the reporters.
He just touched the microphone.
Yeah.
He was doing some obnoxious thing where he's breathing heavy on people.
So wait, you've got off track because your podcast could have been so good, because you go from this amazing performance to the Oscars. You're welcome.
Segue.
You're welcome, but you fucked it up because you don't involve me in show prep. You're welcome.
What is this show prep? What are you talking about?
I don't know. What do you do?
I make another podcast, which I failed to get published, but is done for what it's worth. Abe, did you watch the Oscars?
I did. So the Oscars this year was an hour early. So what I generally do,
fantastic,
is I will think, okay, there's probably 90 minutes of commercials and whatever, and so I'll start 90 minutes after the 7 o'clock. So I'm watching something else, and then at 9:30 or 8:30 rather, I'll start, and I will by the end, by the time they do Best Picture, I'm live, and so that's kind of what I did, and it worked out perfectly. Nothing was spoiled. I was able to watch the whole thing, but basically, I knew it was gonna be a 4-hour kind of slog, and I was like, let me try to trim some of the fat and avoid some of the commercials. And it was great. I enjoyed it. It was I just watched the show and none of the commercials.
We also caught it a little bit later.
15 minutes.
15 or 20 minutes, which was fine. I recorded it ahead of time. And yeah, it was fun to be able to watch it with the kids, for one thing.
Our son, oh my God. This kid loves anything with a winner. He was like, what is this? What is this, the Oscars? I like the Oscars. He was on the edge of his seat right away. What's it start with? Best Supporting Actress or something?
Yeah.
First award. He's on the edge of his seat. Okay, there's people. They're going to name him.
But then he was also
someone's going to win. Someone won.
When are they going to talk about Spider-Man? When are they going to talk about Spider-Man? It's
they're not going to talk about
They're not going to talk about it. They're going to present one award that Spider-Man's going to lose. And I called it. I was like, it's going to lose to the Japanese picture, just because that's the way these things work. And he's like, it should have won. It was better than all those other movies. And I was like, Calvin, you didn't see any of the other movies. You only saw Spider-Man.
But he's just a natural award show watcher. Has opinions, doesn't know shit.
I've got some big problems with the ceremony. First and foremost being, and listeners of the Morning Press will have to endure this rant twice perhaps.
You could just not listen to
the sound design of the Oscars was pure garbage. Whoever was in charge of the levels, fired immediately. You never work in this town again. They had the orchestra jacked all the way up to 11, such that as soon as that came on, it fills the room with sound in a way, because you have to turn up, because they didn't have the voiceover stuff was way too low, and the presenter mics were not high enough, relative anyway to the orchestra.
Which it's hugely possible that in the auditorium it sounded totally fine.
Right, but however they had it mic'd up for the rest of us sounded like garbage. And on top of that, like they bring out Phineas and his sister, the Billie Eilish pop star, to sing the Barbie song, that miserable slog of a song that we covered it won an
Oscar. I like that song now. I want to look at what I'm going to go look right now because there's 2 songs that I might change my mind on.
Anyway, the Billie Eilish song,
Oscar-winning song.
Yeah, well, look at what it was up against, Abe, and I'll get into that in just a second. But they had the piano was very poorly mic'd, such that it was blowing out, like it reaches the top of it.
That one went up against the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, of course the Pumpkins won. But they had the piano mic'd up in such a way that the sound, just him lightly playing the piano, was making the fuzzy sounds on the other end for us, and it just sucked.
And some of us have sensitive baby ears, and we can't handle that kind of thing.
To that category specifically, song of the best original song in a film this year or whatever, it's usually a bit of a slog as far as that goes. Like, it's not often that you get more than a couple.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just Ken in my head all day.
Right. So maybe you get a good Bond theme, and that was might be a legitimately fun song to listen to more than once. But generally speaking, there's not, or fucking,
or an I'm just Ken situation.
Yeah, or an actually great song like "Blame Canada" by the South Park guys.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny. Times have changed. Our kids are getting worse. They won't obey their parents. They just want to fart and curse. Should we blame the government or blame society? Or should we blame the images on TV? No! Blame Canada! Blame Canada! It seems that everything's gone wrong since Canada came along. Blame Canada! Blame Canada! We need to form a full assault! Don't blame yourself.
As happens once in a generation.
In both cases, those are silly.
Right. You need, I think, ideally, you want extremely silly songs to be.
And the RRR one last year or the year before.
Right. The songs this year fucking sucked ass, with the exception of perhaps the I'm Just Ken, just for the campy sort of enjoyment of it all. These were not good songs. This was very much a bunch of songs that here's some songs that were in movies. And the most condescending of which was the one from Killers of the Flower Moon, which the soft bigotry of low expectations is very much a thing.
That's the Bob opinion.
But fuck you, you coward. You tell me. I'm going to play this for you. You tell me how this should be nominated for best song, except for the fact that it is the politically expedient thing to do. We have here a bunch of men.
Maybe you don't need to describe what's happening.
Standing around a large drum. They are holding sticks.
I think it's evident from the sound.
This is the whole song. They do this for 2 minutes.
I liked it.
This is nominated for Best Original Song in a Film.
If you let the song take you, Bob, it will move you. It's on my playlist now. It's not a good song.
I like it. I like it when the women are singing.
That is not a potential best song in a film. By the way, Billie Eilish won. That's fine. I would have preferred it to go to the I'm Just Ken song as well. But real missed opportunity for Phineas and Billie Eilish when they got on stage there. Because this was shortly after the Ryan Gosling performance of the smash hit I'm Just Ken. They could have said, "Eat shit, Gosling," right in that moment, and it would have been cute and funny and awesome. And instead, they didn't, and that's a serious missed opportunity.
Killers of the Flower Moon and Barbie, except maybe for the song award, they were shut out, were they not? It seemed like it was
that was the only award that Barbie won. Yeah, yes, was for the song.
Initially, I was
Barbie didn't win for the song. Oh, that song, yes.
Yeah. Initially, I was thinking that this is going to be like, what was it, 20 years ago with the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, where it's going to be like a domination by the big blockbuster movie that's also critically acclaimed. And I mean, that movie was like 11 for 11. It was like nominated for 11 awards and won all 11. And
Right.
And when the show started, it was like, poor things. I was like, what the hell's going on with this? I mean, it's a good movie, but I was like, is this going the other way? And then, like, it was Oppenheimer, and then I think they ended up winning 7. So basically, they kind of...
I said to Bob, Christopher Nolan finally made a movie boring enough to win an Oscar.
Yeah, that's a bad take by Lori.
Proof is in the pudding, sir.
It was robbed in the sound editing category by the Holocaust movie that wasn't really
okay.
The conversations, lots of conversations that we got to hear.
To be fair, I didn't see the Holocaust movie that I'm now complaining about in the fashion of my son. I only saw one of the movies that was nominated in the category, possibly, maybe 2. But the Oppenheimer's sound design I was staggered by it, sitting in the theater watching this big bomb. It happens, and the sound and the visuals all working together. I think Oppenheimer should have won for sound. It was mostly
a lot of conversations and like women being women, you know.
I saw. I knew that Oppenheimer was going to win a lot of awards, but I was looking for 2 things: the sound to go to the zone of silence and the
zone of interest.
Zone of interest, rather. Zone of silence. And the screenplay, whichever one that it was in, to go to Anatomy of a Fall, because I was like, that screenplay was great, and then the sound of the zone of interest, like that is like literally when you watch it, like it is like a character unto itself. Basically, like there's the movie that's playing, and you're hearing sounds, and it's all coming from the concentration camp. It's like different, like not good sounds, but it's just in the backdrop, and these evil people are just like going about their lives, worrying about nonsense. But like the entire movie, you're like, what is that sound? And you're like, oh my God, I think that's what. So it never like beats you over the head, but the entire movie, in the background, there's sound throughout. And I was like, they did like a very good job with it. I mean, the movie wouldn't work without it. That was basically like the selling point. And so I was like, they have to reward it somehow. Fucking Oppenheimer won enough awards.
All right,
and it won the editing award, rather than she should have.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was a good award for that movie to win. Also, Best Picture.
I think every Nolan movie should probably win Best Editing.
Yeah,
His movies have been spectacularly well put together.
They should. They should retroactively. You know who was great? John Mulaney. John Mulaney was amazing. Can I have more of him?
You know, when he was doing his little spiel, which was a lot of fun, I was like, what? I mean, I know he's got some drug problems or whatever, but like this guy is a shoo-in to be like a host in the future. Like, I mean, he's so good at it. Like it's kind of like
He's the right
so
attitude.
good.
He's the right amount of desperate and thirsty for the sort of adoration that comes with this sort of a gig, right? Like he can both be sort of the Ricky Gervais-y thing going on without being quite so unpleasant as Ricky Gervais, at the same time that he very much obviously has a great deal of mostly unearned reverence for the institution, like for the whole thing. Like he just wants to be fucking famous. He desperately wants to be on television, and this is how you do it, right? Yeah. And he knows exactly what you're supposed to do in that situation. And he should be a host of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, whenever like when they just had the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, I was like, just let these kind of cities host it. Like, why do they go to Jacksonville and what? Just like let the handful of cities that are like suited to the task, just let them do it. And with this, I know there's a novelty factor with trying to get some hot thing to host the Oscars, but like it's like nobody cares for it. So a boring Jimmy Kimmel or like what's his face, John Mulaney, like he would do great, and no one would be too bothered by it, and it would be a better show for it.
Yeah. Zone of Interest, when it won the award that it won, and the director Jonathan Glazer comes up to receive that award, there's some kerfuffle that happened. He says, quote, "Right now we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked sorry, I'm gonna try it again. It's an awkward sentence. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. This became a big deal for some on the Zionist side of things here, because it was initially misinterpreted, I believe, probably innocently so, to being him and his buddy up there refuting their Jewishness literally, like somehow disclaiming.
That's what it sounds like.
Disclaiming their Jewishness. What they're doing is they're saying, essentially, as a Jew, I disavow my Jewishness I'm not disavowing my Jewishness. I'm disavowing the fact of my Jewishness being weaponized as some sort of a cudgel in the war in God. Like people saying that Jews are doing this in defense of Judaism. He's saying this is an affront to my Judaism. He's not trying to say I disavow my Judaism. He's saying I claim my Judaism and say that it should not be weaponized in this way that I find objectionable. That's what he was trying to get at. He did a very poor job of expressing that sentiment, because it is perhaps a clunky sentiment to attempt to express.
It's definitely a clunky sentence, and he was reading off something, right? So this wasn't like off the cuff.
No, he had clearly agonized over, because when you look at it on the page, it is easily dissectable as something that can be comprehended. But when spoken, it is a much more difficult thing to parse, I believe.
And he spoke it poorly, right? Like he was kind of like, he was probably nervous as a lot of people.
Right, a bit flustered, it seemed, yeah.
But
it's a big room full of people.
Yeah.
Do you have, is there anything to say about that in terms of his reaction to it?
So I watched the show, and it was not a remarkable moment. I was like, what? What did he say? Okay, whatever. Something about the war. And just went about the rest of the evening. And then the next day I looked, this morning, my thinking is like, my theory is like, whatever normal thing happens or something that could be easily explained in the real world, the internet is going to make it into something obnoxious, right? And I didn't know what's going to be. I was like, are they going to complain about John Cena being naked, or is it going to be this other thing? Like, I didn't know. Like, I figured that the Ken song everybody would liked, so I didn't think there would be an issue there. But I was like, I didn't see this thing being turned into like a big thing. How dare you? You're like saying this about. I was surprised that it went that far, because like, yeah, clunky sentence, but like if you kind of process what he was trying to get at, like there's nothing really controversial about what he said, I don't think.
I mean, except to people who have decided that any attack on what Israel has done in response to 10/7 is an attempt at moral equivalency that is completely unfair and unjust, right? Like that, and that I think that's where it's coming from, is people who believe that what happened on 10/7 is the crime that matters here, is the thing that is worth responding to, and that any criticism of Israel from Jews is distasteful and unacceptable, because it is drawing an equivalence between what Hamas did on 10/7 and what Israel has done in response to that, and that's what they find so objectionable.
They would hold that view, even like no matter what the Israeli Defense Force did. Like it is like it's a carte blanche to just like do whatever.
I don't know if you can say it's completely carte blanche, but I think that to some extent, yes, sure. I don't hold that view myself. I'm trying to explain what the view is. Besides that, sort of what I found in the moment to be a fairly mild and vaguely anti-Israel position to take, or it's certainly an acknowledgement, or yeah, and I do. I think I do see it as an attempt to draw a moral equivalency where I don't necessarily see one. I thought that the award that was given to the 20 Days in Mariupol documentary director was the most moving moment of the night for me. The speech that he gave there, that he obviously was struggling to get through for a number of different reasons. I thought that was a great moment for, I mean, obviously it's a terrible moment because he receives this award because his documentary was made in unthinkable circumstances and includes very grisly and awful footage of dead children and babies and innocent lives lost in a city that he cares about.
And he acknowledges that, right, to say he wished that he didn't happen.
Right, and that was the thing that was so genuinely moving about the moment, is that he gets up there and takes the award in his hand and says that he would, in a heartbeat, trade it for peace in his homeland. He would trade it for Russia never having started this war. And it's genuinely weird to me how little we care about what's going on, and the way and the way that it has been so fully red-blued. It has been so completely.
Katie Britt seems unimpressed with Vladimir Putin. She seemed not happy with him.
Yeah, but
so it's not just red-blue.
It's functionally it's entirely red-blue. I mean, we have.
I mean, it's like Trump and like most other people. Like, it seems like there's like a good number of Republicans that are for Ukraine also, but because of Trump has such
to
a
what
hold,
extent they're not even willing to vote on the aid package. What are we talking about? They're not willing to the extent that they support Ukraine rhetorically, sure, but they're not willing to go against the dictate of the former president and the candidate for president to actually vote to give them money to actually get the job done.
right?
Like,
it is in deference to the leader of their party. If Trump was not a presence, like if he just kind of fucked off after January 6th, or if he was impeached and removed or whatever, or any other scenario where he's not like a viable candidate now, this would not be a red-blue thing. They would have passed whatever funding they needed to get it passed.
I wonder if it's only red-blue in Congress, because the human beings that I talk to in real life, when I tell them that my best friend is going to Ukraine, like, not a single one is anything but like.
Yeah, you
Putin.
You work at a fancy 5%
you think I can't tell
salon.
who the Republicans are?
No,
I
know,
know
but
by now?
but those are the Republicans who know better, right? Those are the ones who, despite their ongoing willingness to vote for Trump if it comes down to it, are still relatively on the side of fucking NATO and the entire Western alliance. But that's not the case for a huge swath of the Republican Party
but like
anymore.
aside from Trumpers, right. Like if you're going to allow there to be Republicans that aren't just Trumpers, they're all
right. But that's the thing; it has completely broken down relative to where it would have been 20 years ago, where you would have seen the Democrats on the other side of this talking about spending American money on foreign wars that we shouldn't be involved in. Right? Like it's completely reversed itself on the and it turns on this goofy populism question more than anything else. Whatever. It was a remarkably affecting moment during an otherwise I found to be boring night at the Oscars. Largely,
it was very predictable. I mean, like a lot of the all of the awards that whomever won, I was like, okay, I could see that. There wasn't any. I was surprised that Robert Downey Jr. never won one before. Did they get rid of the play people out thing some years ago? There wasn't no opportunity for that last night.
They did it a couple of times. They did it a couple of times.
They just give them a lot. It's not like here's your 20 seconds. Yeah. Like they kind of let it see where it's going, and then if it's boring, they start to play the music. I was so nervous that they were going to start the fucking strings for the 20 Days in Mariupol.
Yeah, because he was taking big pauses, collecting his thoughts or getting to the point.
And trying to speak the English language, right? And trying to figure out what to say next and like trying to say the right thing. And he didn't. He screwed up the syntax and he got the words wrong a half a dozen times, but it was fine because it was very obviously a heartfelt message that he was attempting to deliver. And it would have been a fucking crime against humanity to try to play him off.
There's no way they could have played that. If somebody's crying or somebody's giving some heartfelt thing, I mean, this is a 4 hour. You're running long anyways. Who cares? Like, cut some other thing off. You don't play somebody off like that.
Right. I will say, and I complain about this on the morning press as well. Play fucking clips for the actors. What are we doing?
That was weird.
Bringing out 5 actors to give a stupid toast to the 5 nominees, and you do that fucking 4 times. So this is 20 3 to 5 sentence essays extolling the human virtues of the actor in front of us rather than just playing the 15-second clip from the movie. Play the fucking clip. What are you doing? We're here because clips are fun and cool.
Also,
and we like to give an opportunity for Paul Giamatti to do the Paul Giamatti thing.
Right.
And like his eye is going in three directions and he screams a funny word. And then the kid gets to say something funny. And then the amusing black lady gets to say something funny. Like, play the fucking clips from the goddamn movies. Don't have Brendan Fraser walk out there and talk about how moved he is by Jeffrey Wright's humanity. What are we doing?
Do you think that they do these things to have more celebrities come out to? I mean, this is the Oscars. Like, people are going to come out no matter what. But it seemed like they were going out of their way to just have people come on stage to do things that something they could have just played. Like in the case that you're complaining about. Like initially, I was thinking, did they find previous winners of this award who have a personal relationship to the current nominee? And in some cases it seemed they know each other, and in other cases it's like they're just reading something, or they're just saying some very general good job, buddy. But if it was like some sort of heartfelt thing for everyone, maybe that, I don't know, maybe there's a logic behind that, but it's asking.
First of all, it's asking too much. These people don't fucking like each other mostly. Sometimes they're going to be friends or they'll be friendly.
Yeah.
But for the most part, these are just people you sort of know in the same way that you just sort of know people, right? It's not like they're fucking best buds hanging out. They all have their own fucking teams, right? It's like imagining that. Whatever. Celebrities aren't all friends with each other. Nobody believes that. Yeah. That would be fucking weird.
So, in the run up to the State of the Union, people were like, "Oh God, this fucking old bag of bones is gonna fuck it up somehow. Just go make it through this thing, right?" I didn't have that because I was like, he's been in that Congress for like a million years. He'll figure it out. But when the Best Picture came about and they trotted out Al Pacino, I was like, "Oh my God." He's gonna fuck it up. What is happening?
We gotta get these boomers out of here.
You can't have 80-plus-year-old Al Pacino come out by himself. I know you're trying to honor him for whatever reason. You need to pair him with anybody else. John Krasinski was just hanging around. Just bring him out. Just bring somebody else out to make.
There was a plan. The plan was that he and Michelle Pfeiffer were going to come out together.
Okay.
And they apparently had a script and everything. Michelle Pfeiffer had some sort of an emergency and was stuck on the East Coast.
They were in Scarface together, right?
Yeah. So it was going to be a Scarface reunion, but Michelle couldn't make it. She had some sort of family issue, and she didn't fly out to Los Angeles. And so it was just Al, and they scrapped whatever pre-written bit they had. And apparently the producer of the show told him, don't bother reading the list of films, perhaps worried that at 82 he wouldn't be able to make it through a long
and there's 10 of them, right?
10 film list. And I guess they didn't have time to just throw together a package.
How do you not
You've
have
seen a package a million fucking times where it's just and the nominees are, and then the guy just stands there like a dope, but then they go to the video montage and the voiceover guy takes care of it, right? They've got David Alan Grier there.
Yeah.
He can throw together a quick voiceover package of the nominees, and instead Al fucking shuffles out there as though he's just gotten out of bed, and he's like, I've got this envelope here, and my eyes see Oppenheimer, and everybody's like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
What the fuck just happened? Did he just announce the winner without any sort? They didn't even have time to get the camera on the different faces to
build up, and it almost seemed like he was I see in the future Oppenheimer. It's instead of I'm reading Oppenheimer on this card here. It's
right. Is this a bit? I thought, is he doing an ill-advised bit, or did he just open the envelope and actually read the answer, and the show is over? And it's Nolan's getting up. I hope that is the correct answer, because that's what's happening.
I mean, this might as well have been a unanimous. I don't think they announced. They don't release the tallies, but it must have been a runaway victory for Oppenheimer. I don't think it was that close. But Al Pacino, you don't say this often about somebody who's 83. He's got a newborn, doesn't he? He's got a infant somewhere. Yeah. I don't even know how old this kid is, but that is remarkable. 83 to 8 months or something. And that's the father. It's remarkable.
I thought one of Kimmel's better lines of the night was when he said, Jodie Foster and Robert De Niro are here. Back in 76 or whatever it was, she was young enough to be his daughter, and now she's she's too old to be his girlfriend, or she's 20 years too old to be his girlfriend. That was a funny line that I don't think old Bob De Niro appreciated that one too much.
Jody did, though.
Yeah, Jody liked it, but little close to the bone for Bobby.
Did you? Did Robert Downey take the drug references that Jimmy Kimmel made like in stride, or some people were saying like when he was like saying like let's get over it, or he was doing some hand gestures or whatever. But like I think he was kind of playing along. He wasn't.
Yeah. I thought that was fine. I thought Downey's sort of glib response to receiving the award was in keeping with what we know about Robert Downey Jr. and also, in my opinion, like I know that this was preordained. He wasn't my favorite part of that movie by any means. I didn't think that he was. Like to me, this is not a top 5 Robert Downey Jr. performance in his career.
This is a makeup call for Tropic Thunder, right? I mean, he should have won it for that easily.
Sure, but he's been so much better in other things. He was fine in this, but he's been so much better in other movies.
But that happens sometimes where it's, like when you're shitting on the songs, sometimes it's like a relatively weak feel, like you may have done a better performance like 20 years prior, but like that was like a stacked year or some other movie had the momentum and, it just worked out that way.
Last thing on the Oscars.
No.
John Cena was slightly too naked for my...
No, it's because he has too much muscle.
It was a
what
good
you're
bit.
seeing is too much muscle.
It started as a good, strong bit with Jimmy being like, this is the 50th anniversary of that weirdo who streaked the Oscars.
I did not know. I'm glad you brought that up. I was like, I didn't know we had a streak.
Right, it's funny. And of course, you see the bit coming a mile away where he says... and then he repeats the line, and Cena refuses to do the thing, and he pokes his head around the thing. Very well staged, well put together bit. But then he walks out holding the envelope, as like an Austin Powers bit, where he's holding it in front of the package, and it was very slightly too much naked John Cena on my screen. I needed a bigger envelope.
If he had been a less muscular person, a more normal-looking person with a higher percentage of body fat, you wouldn't feel that way. Yeah. It's because his skin's too tight.
Right, and I think. If somebody was like a more like normal looking person, they wouldn't be up to to doing this bit. But like they showed
Jason Segel would totally do it.
Yeah, I guess Jason Segel would do it. But like they showed like I saw some thing from the side, and they have one of those modesty pouches on them. I think ABC was like we can't.
That is not. That is an incorrect name for that device. It is not any sort of modesty pouch.
It's a modesty pouch. That's
what it's called.
It was too much. I needed a slightly larger envelope or
That's
something.
Why I keep telling you not to lose body fat because it looks
don't
weird.
worry, it's not fucking working, lady. Relax. Let's roll the dice. We had some Strassman, but we'll skip it because it's late. It was sad. It was just a bad one. Strassman letting us down as usual. All right, I have rolled the 30-sided die and the 100-sided die. We are going to position number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 list. And no. That's the position on the Hot 100.
Wow. Have we been
number 4.
Is this the highest? Or
Whoa. Very high.
The year is number 29, which will put us in 2011.
Wow.
So 2011
very exciting.
And position number 4. But first, we have to deal with this week's Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Number 1 is Texas Hold'em by Beyonce. We have a Kanye song at number 2. Lovin' on Me has been on the charts for quite some time. It's down to number 3. That's the Jack Harlow song. And number 4 is called Beautiful Things by someone named Benson Boone.
Uh-oh. I bet it's country.
Yeah.
Benson Boone's a country name.
Wasn't there a Boone from Oklahoma State?
He's got floppy hair and a mustache, and he's standing in a field.
Yeah, it's probably country.
Wow, top 5 country song. I guess it's also...
Yeah, it's bad
We don't
times.
know. We have not yet clicked on it. We can't assume anything.
For a while there it was rough, but lately I've been doing better than the last 4 cold Decembers I recall. And I see my family every month. I found a girl my parents love. She'll come and stay the night and I think I might have it all. And I thank God every day for the girl He sent my way. But I know the things He gives He can take away. And I hold you every night. That's a feeling I wanna get used to. But there's no man as terrified as the man who stands to
52 million views 1 month ago. This is a popular song.
Maybe people put it on to fall asleep.
Oh, I hope I don't lose.
I think it's coming to something here.
Please stay. I want you, I need you, oh God. Don't take
Good Lord.
these beautiful things that I've got. Please stay. I want you, I need you, oh God. Don't take these beautiful things that I've got. Please don't take.
Why do they only do that part for that long?
Everything is fucking like Hosier.
Mumford and Sons,
It's Mumford and Sons. It's
Kings of Leon,
Kings of Leon. Fucking sucks ass.
He probably
Lumineers.
grew up on that, right? Like he's inspired by.
No, he didn't grow up. He grew up on his shitty Gen X parents' music is what he grew up on. I'm telling you, it's a blight. He grew up on Huey Lewis and the News and whatever else. Fucking
Gen X, famously.
Gen X.
Loving.
What do they listen to?
Huey Lewis and the News.
What do they like? Prince?
Let's see here.
Is this 2011? I was guessing that Lady Gaga would be at the 4th spot, but I guess she's at the 1 spot.
Well,
Might
we're
also
looking
be at the 4th spot.
I don't know if we're in the right week here. This is we're on 311.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Let's go back a week here. So the 6th through the 12th of March 2011. Number 1 was indeed Lady Gaga with Born This Way. Possibly my least favorite Lady Gaga song. Number 2 was a tremendous song, Fuck You, Forget You by CeeLo Green, one of my favorite singles of the last, I was going to say the last decade, but god damn it, this was a long time ago.
A lot of foul language in the top 5.
Yeah, look at that. Number 3, Grenade by Bruno Mars. And number 4 is a Pink song called Fucking Perfect. What a top 5, by the way. Lady Gaga, CeeLo, Bruno Mars, Pink, and then Rihanna featuring Britney Spears, Katy Perry at 6, Enrique Iglesias at 7, Katy Perry and Kanye at 8, J-Lo and Pitbull at 9, and Dr. Dre at number 10. I have no memory whatsoever of Fucking Perfect by Pink, but let's play that.
But maybe when we hear it, we'll know.
She got like into the acrobat. Every time I see a show of her, like when they show it on TV, she's always like doing some sort of acrobatic performance.
Yeah.
Bad decisions, that's alright. Welcome to my silly life. Mistreated, this place misunderstood. Knowing it's all good, it didn't slow me down. Mistaken, always second guessing, underestimated. Look, I'm still around. Pretty.
Yeah, I do know this one.
I've heard of this song.
Like you're less than fucking perfect. Pretty, please. If you ever feel like you're nothing, you're fucking perfect to me. You're so mean. World scared, so I swallow the fear. The only thing I should be drinking is an ice cold beer. So cool in line.
I always fucking hate Pink.
I'm done looking for the critics because they're everywhere. They don't like my jeans, they don't get my hair. Exchange ourselves and we do it all the time. Why do we do that? Why do I do that? Why do I do that? Yeah!
All right, that's enough of that.
That's a Taylor Swift song now, by the way.
I sort of refuse to participate in this contest between
It's
these
like
two artists.
Pink is better than that Benson.
I'll give it to Pink on only because of my pre-existing. I will acknowledge this is a pre-existing bias, and because of my hypothesis about the world, which is that I believe that this song will have more staying power 15 years from now.
It already has now.
No.
I've heard that
Right.
song.
What I'm saying is that the guy whose name I've already forgotten,
Jackson Arnold
Bennett Boone or something.
Yeah.
That fella in 15 years, there's no way that anyone will remember that song, but people will still remember
People who
the
are
Pink
in
song,
middle school listening to it now will be the only people.
Imagine he becomes like a Taylor Swift caliber performer, and like 15 years from now,
will
like,
not.
oh boy,
He
were
will
you
not do
wrong,
that.
Bob? This Benson Boone guy.
Benson Boone. There you go. Abe took a note, so he knows who we're talking about.
Well, I don't know
here.
if it's a band.
Missed out on some much better songs. You know what? Just to get the bad taste out of my mouth, I'm going to play the CeeLo song right now.
I mean, I hear this song at least once a week.
See you driving round town with the girl I love, and I'm like, fuck you. I just put change in my pocket, it wasn't enough. I'm like, fuck you, and fuck her too. Said if I was richer, I'd still.
One of the most purely joy-filling songs that I can remember of this century is the experience of listening to this
Century,
song
nice and broad.
for the first time.
I can't afford a Ferrari, but that don't mean I can't get you there. I guess he's an Xbox and I'm more Atari. But the way you play your game ain't fair. I picture the fool that falls in love with you. Oops, she's an old winner. Well, just don't you should know. Ooh, I've got some news for you. Yeah, go to and tell your little boy free. See you driving round town with the girl I love, and I'm like.
Since the dawn of the new millennium, this is one of the songs that I've loved the most upon first hearing it, and I've listened to it 1,000 times after that on repeat.
Okay, so let's talk about what we watched.
In a moment, I need to yell at Abe because at the I don't know if it was the most recent, the Biffler. It was the first Biffler that I did not live chat to Abe as I listened to it. But it was, they did a bracket because we're nearing March, and it was an Atlanta rappers bracket.
March.
The least dramatic, no stakes bracket imaginable, because there are actually only like 2 Atlanta rappers of consequence. I mean, I know that the Atlanta hip hop scene is what it is.
There's like 4.
It's great, but you can't. It's hard to build a whole bracket out of just Atlanta rappers, as evidenced by the fact that I think, did you include Outkast and Big Boy and Andre all as 3 separate entries?
3 separate.
This is a problem. But despite, and if that was the route you're going to go, which I think you have to do to fill out a top 16 Atlanta rappers bracket, you have to break out CeeLo Green from Goody Mob and put him in the top 16. CeeLo had 2 solo records that basically blow away all of the other rappers on the Atlanta list, with the exception of Outkast and maybe Ludacris, and like other people have more important opinions about hip hop than I do, obviously. But in terms of like crossover appeal, the 2 CeeLo records that he made with
I don't think they were doing a crossover appeal bracket.
With Danger Mouse are far superior to the vast majority of Atlanta rap that has come out.
One of the whitest people you know.
Yeah, sure.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And my mind is already gone in the fear of the unknown. Somehow this doesn't concern me. And you can stand right there if you want, but I'm going on. And I'm prepared to go it alone. I'm going on.
wrong. I did not create this bracket, not to throw anyone under the bus, but this was aided by the robots. Like somebody plugged in whatever, and it spit back out these artists, and they, for whatever reason, they broke up Outkast, so it had 3 entries for like those 2 people, and that's how it kind of broke. Not that it would.
What was? I don't even remember the result of the. Did Outkast win ultimately? Yeah. That's the obvious correct answer. At least you got to the correct outcome there. But CeeLo should have been broken out onto his own thing. In my opinion, did far better work as a solo artist anyway than he did.
That's actually a good point. I didn't even think of CeeLo, but yeah, that
great Christmas album too.
Right, CeeLo. Yeah, he has a tremendous Christmas album. In addition to the 2 Danger Mouse.
Does that make him a better Atlanta rapper than anyone else? I don't know. That's not up to me. But he does have a great Christmas album. There is no rapping in it. There's no rapping in the Christmas album.
Those 2 Gnarls Barkley records are fucking like 2 of my favorite records of the last 20 years also.
So next time you do a bracket, make it a Bob's favorite Atlanta rappers bracket. And he'll be more on board. Bracket.
Danger Mouse is also a Georgia guy. Like, it all qualifies. Right. It all could have been within the Atlanta family, and I'm not wrong here. CeeLo should have been his own thing, and if not, then Gnarls Barkley should have been its own thing. But the 2 Gnarls Barkley records are fucking fantastic and should be listened to more. Anyway, you've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show over at Substack, brainiron.substack.com, where you can become a subscriber and get all of the benefits of that, or just show your appreciation for the silly things that we do here by signing up. It would be much appreciated. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig. Abe, the State of the Union was Thursday, but I know for a fact that you decided not to watch it live like a true American patriot, and instead elected to go see a movie instead. Though looking at the list, I couldn't figure out what the fuck it would be that you would go see this weekend. So what did you see?
So I watched Cabrini, which apparently is some Catholic person I've never heard of. This is when she died, she was upgraded to sainthood. She's the patron saint of immigrants or something along those lines. Nice. Mother Cabrini. Anyways, this movie is from the same director that did The Sound of Freedom, the runaway hit about the child exploitation thing a year ago.
Okay.
So it's the same director. This one is it's set like in the late 1800s in like New York City, and like these recent immigrants from Italy are being like looked down upon, like all these dirty fucking people get out. Basically, so you can kind of. It's like the same. It's like America kind of goes through the same experience with every like wave of new immigrants, and this was with the Italians, and these are the kind of movies where like, oh, this great woman who's like so like religious and pious, and she's like trying to do good things. So she's trying to open an orphanage, and she wants to open many orphanages around the world. She wants to start in China. She gets a lot of pushback. Basically, like everybody above her, like in the racket, the Catholic Church system, it's like, oh, fuck off, like stop helping people. Just know your role and just shut the fuck up. Like basically, the whole movie is like, you're just a woman, shut the fuck up, just go do your thing. And then bumfuck town in Italy, and she's very resilient. She's like, nobody tells me I can't do. Basically, the whole movie is like, there's like a moment where it's like, your place, and like that, like it's like some weird like thing, like, oh, fuck you, I'll show you. Like, I think they did it like 3 times where like somebody above her said, know your place or something along those lines. And then she has
she doesn't answer to anybody but the Lord, presumably. And
she's giving lip to the Pope, like she had an audience with the Pope, and she's like, hey, what the fuck, your stooge is not letting me do a thing. And the Pope is like, oh, you're persistent. All right, let's do this. He came up with a compromise. We'll do this orphanage scheme, but not in China. You're going to go west. I'm hearing troubles in New York City with the immigrants of Italy. Go there and figure it out. She goes to New York City, and it's just like a shithole. Just like everybody's like violent, and like there's prostitution. There's all this stuff. And she's slowly but surely builds up the orphanage, like, and then she meets more. So the archbishop is like, "Fuck you, lady! Why are you trying to help these poor people?" Like these are like I don't know. I mean, this happened like a long time ago, but like every like character who wasn't her was just like fuck you. You're trying to help kids. Like, why are you doing that? Leave them. Like the mayor is like this. Everybody's like this, but eventually she overcomes. You know, that's what this movie is about. She like figured it out. She's got some lung disease or whatever. She wasn't expected to make it long. She lives to almost 70. She does everything she set out to do, despite what everybody told her. It's one of those like uplifting kind of schemes. It was not bad. It was a decent enough movie, but it was just like I've never heard of this lady. I'll probably forget about her a week from now. But it was a good movie.
Well, good. It sounds like a fairly sort of traditional biopic sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
We watched, as we mentioned earlier, Poor Things. It was a good movie. I'm glad that it won.
The things that it won. Very pretty movie.
Especially given the fact that the alternative for a lot of those things was Barbie. Like, I think this was a far superior and much more interesting movie than Barbie was. And so I was glad to see that it got recognition instead of Barbie. That being said, it's not clear to me that this movie was saying much of anything. Like, it's not clear to me what this movie was about.
It was just a nice story.
It didn't portray the man in a positive right. I mean, basically, they're into her like toddler mind, and then when she becomes of age,
right.
she's
No,
like,
obviously there's that, and it can be uncomfortable if you think about the fact that
I was very discomforted watching this in the theater.
You guys are. It's not lame. Wusses. You're a bunch of wusses.
No, but like in my head, I can't watch this is like the mind of like, what was she, like 4 years old? I'm like, what am I watching here? It's not
right. And it's never clear how quickly she's progressing, right? But it is also
she's fine.
It's also pretty clear that like she's not a fully capable. She's not an agent capable of giving consent necessarily throughout. That being said, I enjoyed the provocation. Like, I recognize it as a provocation, and I appreciated the provocation. And it was at least a super interesting movie, right? Like, I complained. I didn't exactly complain, but Willem Dafoe's face, like, it won for makeup, and that surprised me because I didn't think that Willem Dafoe's face was particularly well done as these sorts of things go.
Were you looking for something more aesthetic? Because I mean, they weren't going for that.
Makeup includes hair too.
Yeah, it was meant to be an unpleasant thing to look at, obviously. And I enjoyed the production design of the whole thing, and it was silly in a way that was appealing to me, like with the goofy where he burps out the bubble that like because he doesn't.
And when he says, "So I did the obvious thing and put the brain of the baby into the woman,"
right?
Like,
and it was funny,
and
fantastic. It was well done, and it was what it was. It's not clear to me that it is saying anything that is.
It's just a nice story.
Yeah, I don't know if it's nice. You keep saying
nice. It was a nice story.
It's not nice.
It ended nice.
Yeah. The whole thing was nice. She was happy the whole movie.
Yeah, it's just like it's not clear to me that, again, I mean, I've already said what I have to say about it, but it's not obvious to me that it is saying anything that requires a great deal of going over. Like, it's just saying what it's saying, and it was nice to look at. I also don't like all of the dresses and stuff. I don't fucking care.
God,
like,
as usual,
I so don't care about the stupid dresses.
I know you don't care. As usual, we don't get to see a lot of women enjoying sex in movies that aren't porn. So, thanks that movie. Like,
I mean, we don't get to see a lot of sex happening in movies that appears to be enjoyable between adults. I mean, you say she didn't have agency,
but she did, and she enjoyed sex, and that was the point.
She acquired the agency, but early on she didn't know what the hell was going on.
Right. She was an infant.
So?
Do you think? Okay, so when the father brought his like two young kids to like watch or whatever, do you think that actually happens? Like back in the days, like all right, figure it out, kids.
I mean, yeah, I've heard.
It still happens.
I've heard stories along that line many times before. I think Mark Ruffalo is sort of jumped the shark, maybe in terms of his ability to, because like I assume that he was told not to worry too much about a consistent accent, but this was Dick Van Dyke level bad in terms of the English accent and the way that it jumped around and being just absurd and farcical and inconsistent.
Oh God, it was so good to see Charlie from Girls. I know he played like the worst person in the movie, but Oh, I was so happy to see him.
I don't know who that is in reference to at all.
Husband,
Okay.
the former husband.
Okay.
He was in Girls, and he was like the most likable character, and then he just quit the show. And he came back for one episode, and then he left again. But it's just so good to see him.
Yeah, like, but what's with the garden of chimera animals that
Why
includes
not that? The guy's a weird surgeon. Why wouldn't you put the head of a pug on the body of a chicken? What? Obviously, you put the brain of the baby in the woman.
And then you put the brain of the goat in the man,
Yes.
I suppose, at the end there.
It's whimsical and lovely.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I'm glad it won the awards it won, and I thought that she was very good. I'm not sure why you win makeup awards for making her ugly relative to her natural beauty. She was purposefully. Her beauty was not at all emphasized. Like, it was silly of the characters in that movie to be flummoxed by her beauty when they were clearly not emphasizing her beauty in the presentation of the character. Also, it's amusing to me that she's effectively playing a doll in the year that Barbie came out, and it's a much more interesting version of that sort of a story than the Barbie movie was. I think it is trying to say something a little bit more interesting than certainly Barbie was, and it's doing it in much the same way. And it's funny to me that those two movies came out in the same year, and I haven't seen that talked about in terms of them being sort of siblings at the very least of one another, if not necessarily twins. And yeah, the performances were all good, and she in particular was very, very good in it.
I did not realize she'd been nominated so often. Like, she won for La La Land, right? And so this is her, but she's like, I think like 4 or 5 nominations already. She's not that old.
Yeah, she's very good.
I saw a play.
And yeah, Lori went to the theater.
Kinky Boots.
Kinky?
It was written by Cyndi Lauper.
How was it?
Which I didn't know. It was fine. It was local theater, so different than you're used to. Very small, intimate theater, maybe a little too intimate. The 2 male leads, one of them fucking incredible. And like, as an actor, he was just kind of fine. And he doesn't sing until a little later in the show. And he started singing, and it was just like, holy shit! The fuck? This is a waste. Why are you here and not singing somewhere? Jesus. But it was fine.
Oh, nice.
Local theater is different than regular theater.
When you say a small venue, like, what are we? How big? How many seats are we talking about? Like under 100
I don't know how
seats?
to answer that. Probably under 100.
Lori is a notorious, terrible crowd
20?
estimator.
I don't know. 100?
Well, like
I don't know.
small.
Somewhere
Okay, so
between
yeah,
20 and 100.
yeah.
I don't know.
And then
You gonna ask me to parallel park a car next? Jesus.
2 weeks ago, we watched the first episode, the debut episode of the Kate Winslet show on HBO.
Oh, I did too, yeah.
We didn't watch the one from last night, so we're an episode behind. I suppose we'll keep up with that show. The Regime, is that what they're calling it? What do they call it? Yeah. What did you think of episode 1 of The Regime, Abe?
I thought it was okay. I mean, you know, anything Kate Winslet, I'll watch. I'm a big fan. But, like, it was first, I'm like, all right, I don't know where they're going to go with this, but we'll see. But, like, it was fine.
Yeah. It felt bad to me. I like Kate Winslet, and I laughed a handful of times throughout the episode. But it's so hard to do farce. It's so hard to do satire without it devolving into very silly farce. And if you're not just going to do a farce, like, it's this bizarre, very difficult line to walk that HBO had the exact problem with when they did the Tim Robbins show 15 years ago or whatever it was.
What show?
I can never remember the name of it. It was... It had
Was it like one word?
There was an Indian actor in it. Jack Black was in it.
On the Brink or something Brink, something...
Yeah, The Brink.
I don't think I ever watched
and there's a moment in it. Is Tim Robbins literally flying like an F-15 or something by the end of the series? Like, it becomes a very silly show. It starts as a silly show. But somehow the attitude is all wonky.
Yes.
And I had the same feeling watching the first episode of this, that the attitude was just sort of like they hadn't quite figured out the voice. And like, this character is obviously pretty well realized by Kate Winslet, because Kate Winslet is great. It's just not clear to me that they knew exactly what they were doing with the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll find out. But I have a feeling that it is bad. I'm not rendering judgment. I'm not quite as firm in my belief as I was after the first episode of True Detective Night Country that we had something bad on our hands. But I suspect that this might be bad also. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
It wasn't a promising start. To your point, the Brink show I'm reminded of because they didn't do that well. There was like a movie was like Death to Stalin. And it was like, I don't know, like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
And they kind of did that well.
It was Coen Brothers, wasn't it?
Death to Stalin is not the Coen Brothers.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know who did it, but basically, the problem in this, the regime is that, so the back, her handlers have this attitude.
The death of Stalin, not death to Stalin, if you're looking around for
Death
this at home.
Correction, yes. But that, I thought they stuck the landing there. With the regime, it's like, if this Kate Winslet character is like as evil as she's presented to be, like her stooges wouldn't be so cavalier in the way that they are. Like the way they're almost behaving as if they're like staffers, like on Veep, where they have all their little.
It has a very Veep feel.
Yeah, it does.
Because they have like that kind of attitude, but it's like this woman could just kill you because just on a whim. Like you would be a little more serious if this were actually happening.
Right, but I didn't get that feel. Like when I watch Veep, the feeling that I get is closer to like Curb than it is to The Brink. Right? Like you have to have the right voice. It all has to be unified. It has to work. You can't be both Burn After Reading and Veep at the same time or something. Like there's some weird thing. Like Burn After Reading very much works for me, even though it is an incredibly silly movie. Now, yes, that's the Coen brothers. They know what the fuck they're doing. And maybe it's not clear that whoever made this show knows what the fuck they're doing. It's just satire is constantly in danger of devolving into something much sillier. And unless you're going to embrace the silly, it's a very difficult thing to do. That's all I'll say. It's a hard thing to do.
I forget if I mentioned this last week, but if I did not, I'm also watching there's a show on FX called Shogun.
Very, very well received show.
Yeah, I've only seen the first 2 episodes.
Some mild interest in watching it, but yeah.
Right. It's like I think they're doing it in one go, like the first season. Like I think it's like a miniseries or whatever. But like the first 2 episodes, like set in like the 1600s, and it's in Japan. I'm always curious about that part of the world. And
that's the word for it. Is curious.
so far so good. The one thing.
Do you bring your notebook?
There are these Catholics harassing the Japanese. There's like some Spaniards and Portuguese are like encroaching on Japan, and so there are Japanese characters and they're speaking in Japanese and it's subtitled, and there are Portuguese characters and they're speaking in English. Like, and I'm like, you're halfway there. I guess we're like, we can't have all of it be foreign language. We gotta.
They can.
They could.
Is the show good? Is it worthy of the wide praise that it is receiving?
It's the first 2 episodes are very good because it kind of like it's. They've been comparing this to like a Game of Thrones kind of thing, but basically there's like these 5 houses that are competing for power because like the main guy is like almost dead and like the heir is like 8 years old, and so basically like the kid's gotta get to 16 before he takes over. So now there's like this power vacuum and like the different factions are like conspiring against one another, and so like there's that. There's no dragons like Game of Thrones, but like it's kind of like it's built towards like it's one of those where people just start killing each other thing. But the first 2 episodes,
I don't know if I have time for another show right now, but I did want to at least dip into it and see if it was worth it. All right, Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight then, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.
You'll recall that I had previously talked about including in the show perhaps embarrassing Google searches, like, like, what did you Google this week that is embarrassing?
Yeah.
And I was walking past Lori while she was sitting there at the dining room table working on some homework. And she had her calculator out, and she had plugged into the calculator the following formula. 2,000 divided by 4. And then the equals button.
I was also doing 2,000 divided by 0.4.
What I saw on the calculator screen was 2,000 divided by 4. And I thought... similar to the Googling.
I also don't know what that is right now.
What other just
It starts with a
humiliating things have you plugged
It
into the
starts with a
magical
5.
supercomputer
I do not know
in
what
your
the
pocket?
answer is.
And before I elected to humiliate my wife, just involving myself,
I'm not embarrassed.
I called out across the house and I said, "Katie." She was playing video games in the living room at the time. I said, "Katie, what's 2,000 divided by 4? And Katie goes, 500? And I said, "Yes, very good." And Lori was somehow not properly chagrined. Has no shame.
It's not a thing I can.
I agree with Lori. First of all, I mean, you're delegating most of the math to the stupid thing. Like, who cares if you add one more?
I'm doing different maths.
Yeah.
I'm trying to arrive at an answer in a multiple choice column. I just want to make the calculator say one of those numbers so I can select that number and then see if it's right. So I could have said 2 plus 3. I was just doing things.
Yes, but to me, and I know I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own ass.
I do not give fucks about what you're trying to do. I don't care.
2 plus 3 is like breathing, right? Yeah. Like it's just 05. Like it's not even. It's nothing to think about. There's no. You say mental math. 2,000 divided by 4 is not mental math. 2,000 divided by 4 is just 500. Like it so, in the same way that when you say how many letters are in the word magic, I just say 5. Or like that thing that my brain does where it's like.
Okay, and I can remember where I've been in my life and what was said there. We're good at different things.
It's just funny because like it doesn't strike me as a mental math activity. It's just there.
Okay.
The two things that I do that are like that, which I will defend 100%. One is, one is hard to defend, but like, I have like a notepad on my fridge and I write things down. And then when I go pick things up, I pick them up. Sometimes there'll be like 2 things on it, things that anyone could remember, like a toilet paper and a thing.
No, it's fine.
I take it with me and I'm like, all right, what is this again? And the 2 things.
I bet you never fucking forget a goddamn thing, too.
The other one is less defensible. I just do it out of habit. I don't need to do this. I've been to the same theater like 50 times every year, and every time I have my GPS to the theater and back home. I don't need to.
It's because of traffic. That's a city
like
person
right there.
thing.
I use the same route. I don't even. I just kind of do it. So it's like if you have the calculator there, like just press the buttons. And also, it's a good way to make sure the calculator is still functioning.
That's right. You're not double checking your math. You're double checking that the calculator works.
Working. No, I can.
Very smart.
My thing that I don't know how you don't remember shit. I don't know how you can't remember a thing that happened to you. I'm not super talented. I don't think. I can just remember where I've been and who said what.
Yeah.
And instead of being able to just divide numbers that a machine can do, can this calculator remember shit for me? No.
Yeah. When the TI-80 whatever calculators came out, I was like, boy, I never have to think about math again. I could just press the buttons and move on with my life. This is a great moment in history.
It makes me sad. I don't know why, but it does. It makes me sad.
I've just never been good at that.
It's such an easy to delegate task. Why do you need to do the thing? It's such a press the button.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think I'm actually doing anything, and I'm not trying to claim. Again, I'm not trying to claim credit.
I'm not doing anything when I remember things.
Yeah.
I'm just existing. Better than you is the only way.
Yeah. See, this is where again. I'm not doing the judging. The judging is happening elsewhere. Someone is feeling judged and reacting negatively because of it. Not my fault.
The argument,
like I said, I can't get a machine to do that for me. So.
There is no argument. This argument does not exist without some judgment. It just doesn't exist. There has to just be some.
I don't feel judged at all.
It's not an argument.
I don't.
I am observing.
I think in order to feel judged, I would need to. There needs to be some shade.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And there is.
I don't feel that. I don't care.
Yeah. Not judging, observing and reporting as always.
Yeah, fine. I do that then. I don't care.
Good night.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.